Welcome to All In, a straight-shooting, science-based podcast about periods, fertility, and nurturing health outside of unrealistic beauty expectations. We will mostly, but not exclusively, focus on hypothalamic amenorrhea, HA, a component of the female athlete triad, and relative energy deficiency in sport.
I'm Dr. Nicola Rinaldi, scientist and lead author of the book No Period, Now What? I specialize in helping people understand how their eating, exercise, and lifestyle habits are keeping them from hormonal health and their best life. My work focuses on regaining periods, improving fertility, and breaking free of the rules of underlying diet culture.
My name is Florence Gillet. I'm a certified eating psychology coach and the founder of BeyondBodyImage.com. I specialize in mental recovery, helping people let go of toxic health beliefs to finally feel at ease in their bodies at any size.
Every 2 weeks, the All In podcast brings you real recovery stories, expert insights, and new scientific research on HA, hormonal health, and fertility, with an unmissable touch of body respect and women's empowerment.
Just a reminder that this podcast represents the opinions of the hosts and their guests. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. It is for informational purposes only. And because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Music by the Andy Shulman Band, available on Spotify. And hello again, Nicola. How are you?
Doing really well today. It's lovely and warm today in Boston, so it's very exciting after a cold, snowy winter.
Spring is coming.
It is. It's great. So I'm very excited to have our guest on today, who is Meg behind the YouTube channel Megsyrecovery. So it's lovely to have you on, Meg, and I'm excited to chat with you today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So I think a good place for us to start would just be for you to tell us a little bit about your story. You had an eating disorder, so tell us a little bit about that and your story with amenorrhea and what encouraged you to start your YouTube account and for eating disorder recovery.
Okay, sure. So I was diagnosed with an eating disorder when I was 14, and I'd started getting ill probably when I was about 12 or 13, and I hadn't started my period yet at that point. And then with being ill, I was like weight suppressed. So I was below a healthy weight for my body, which meant I then didn't start my period. And I know that's not true for everybody. Like some people actually do start their period when they're underweight, unhealthy weight for their body. But that wasn't the case for me. I didn't start my period. Then the doctors put me on the pill, supposedly for my bones. So I was getting periods, but they were artificial periods. And I didn't come off the pill until in my 20s. And so that's when I had my first natural period. So despite I had times previously when I'd been weight restored, I'd kind of had healthier times and then relapses. But during those whole times, I never would have known if I was having a natural period. Yeah, that's kind of what happened with my period. And then I have had it since then. In the last couple of years, I have been pregnant to about 8.5 months. So I obviously wasn't having a period then. And we sadly lost our baby. He died in March last year. Yeah, so it's been a really rough year. And then I've since had 2 miscarriages since that time. So for the last couple of years, periods have been not, but not because of eating disorder reasons, like because of fertility issues. So that's kind of my period journey. And then eating disorder wise, I'd say for the first 10 years of being ill, I didn't really receive that great treatment. I was in the UK, so it's on the NHS. I was in adolescent services, and it kind of seems potluck sometimes, the treatment you get, how good it's going to be. And just for me, it wasn't really that good, I wouldn't say. And then I moved abroad when I was about 22, 23. And I relapsed. So I moved to Dubai. I'm originally from the UK. I moved to Dubai about age 25 and I relapsed. And a relapse is never good. But fortunately, I came across the most incredible psychologist who did a course of CBT-E with me. So cognitive behavioral therapy enhanced. And it was just phenomenal. It was the best treatment I've ever received. It has absolutely changed my life. So if there's anything to be grateful for in that relapse, it was that I was really fortunate to get really good treatment. And after having years and years of not getting good treatment, like, I know how valuable that is.
Yeah.
And so then I say, like, with starting the YouTube channel, and I have an Instagram as well, both called Megsyrecovery. My husband actually got me into it, weirdly. He's always been so supportive and really wanted to, like, learn about eating disorders. He's always researched them. And one way he did that was to start watching YouTube videos. So he kind of introduced me to them. And I started watching a few myself and, like, looking at the kind of community around eating disorder recovery. And it was kind of hit and miss what I found. I'd say some of it, there's some really, really great people to follow. But some of it's quite destructive, harmful. Like, I would say there's some quite irresponsible content out there. And so knowing that I was getting this really, really good treatment myself, which was helping me so much, I don't know, I think I kind of just wanted to share it. I call it share it forwards. Like, I feel so lucky that I've received such good help after a long period of not getting it. And it sounds corny, but it's really a privilege to be able to share that forwards and to try and do it responsibly as well. Like, to try and put content out there that's kind of treatment informed and that I know for a fact has helped me and has been different to the treatment I've had in the past. And it's nice to be able to share it in a way that can hopefully, like, the things that I know for a fact have helped me, hopefully they can help other people too.
Oh,
that's really lovely.
Totally do. And I cannot tell you how many of my clients just come and say, like, oh, of course, I love Meg. She's great. And I think so many people, you're right, don't get access to proper treatment. And just like you've shared your story right now with us, like, I'm just so grateful for you and your YouTube channel. It's such a gift to the world, and for you to do it without any retribution, or financial expectation behind it, just because you feel like so many people probably need that advice and can't get it. I cannot tell you how many people benefit from that. And it might not be enough for them to recover, but it definitely plants a seed, right, in their heads. And so thank you so much for being here, for sharing your story, for telling us, all of this.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope, like, through the channel, really my hope, like, I think what I've learned through my treatment this time is how much it's in the actions. And you can understand it all you want, and you can want to get better all that you want, but unless you do stuff about it repeatedly as well, not just once, like, you continuously do recovery, no matter how bad it feels. I think that's what I've learned, like, that's where it needs to come from. So hopefully if the YouTube channel and Instagram show anything, it is that it is a lot in actions. And
I think it's a big job, because you're constantly posting your meals, your snacks. And I mean, it's...
Wow. Yeah, I think I try really hard to also kind of look after myself with it. So especially with the year we've just had, there's times when I really have not been up to posting, and I've tried to hold in mind, like, you can't pour from an empty cup. So I think a lot of the time I really need to make sure I'm okay first. But sometimes I feel a bit selfish, but like, I won't be able to help at all. And I don't want to get resentful of it as well. Like, oh, I have to post my meal now. So I try and really just do it when I'm able to. And it does mean I kind of go periods when I can't do it. And I'm sorry for people, because I know, like, people do rely on these videos coming out if they're helpful. And people will message me like, I don't know what to do if I don't have your videos. And then I feel so bad when I'm not posting them. But I'm going to be no good to anyone if I get so sick of it that I can't post one. So yeah, I try and just do it when I'm able.
Could I ask you a couple quick questions about your journey? So did any of the doctors ever explain to you that the period you were getting on the pill was not really a real period, or did they just sort of leave that piece of information out?
In all honesty, I don't know that anyone ever really discussed with me my period. I was just told I was being put on the pill for my bones, and it was kind of left at that. I didn't really give it much thought. And then because I was getting a period, I didn't really think further, even though it was synthetic and it wasn't really a period. And a lot of my friends were on the pill, so it almost normalized for me. Yeah. I thought, oh, I'm just the same as everybody else, which it could have been hiding that I horrifically wasn't the same as everybody else. Like, I was really not healthy, but it kind of just plastered over that.
Yeah. And the other point that I wanted to make is that there are a lot of people who experience primary amenorrhea, which is what you had, because they don't, they start under fueling at a young age or are heavily involved in exercise. And it's something that's not actually talked about very much. So with our work, me and Florence, we mostly talk about it in terms of secondary amenorrhea. But I had somebody messaged me the other day saying that one of our earlier podcasts was the first time that she'd really heard that primary amenorrhea could be the same thing. So I think that your case illustrates that nicely, so that it's, if you're under fueling and you're exercising a lot, that can prevent periods from happening in the first place. There can be many other reasons for it as well, but I think for us to keep that in mind and sort of recognize that your case is one of primary amenorrhea and you were able to recover from that. And, I think that can be really helpful for people to hear as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also mine was purely from underfueling. I didn't have an issue with exercise. So even food, like, thank God, honestly, that I never had the exercise as well, because I'd have done myself even more harm. But just from food alone, I managed to be in that much damage.
And that we try to share also to anybody listening to us, that there's different factors, but you can have it from only underfueling or from only exercising too much. Still, if you feel like you're fueling enough, or there's different combinations that you can have. It's not that you have to have all the factors aligned. So it's important that you say that too. So I think it's you almost answered our first question already. But many people in HA recovery, and I'm going to focus on HA, but obviously you use your own experience with your eating disorder recovery, but we typically focus on HA because we are not eating disorder experts that are certified as eating disorder experts. So they kind of start strong, but then sometimes it's difficult to stay on the path of recovery. And I'm just interested to know, especially, when bodies are changing after you kind of start fueling more, what are some of the habits or tricks that kind of keep you on your path for recovery?
Yeah, it's such a good question, because again, like, you can have all the motivation in the world to recover, and then when you start, it's so difficult and there are so many things that are hard, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I've changed my mind, I don't want to do it anymore.
Let me go back.
How do you keep going in those moments? So with my body changing, I think I found it better to flip my focus and focus more on my life than my body. So I wasn't recovering for a certain body type, I was recovering to live my life. And my body would just be whatever size it naturally needed to be to support the life that I wanted to live. And then also, like, body fashions change as well. I think I've been ill for however long it was now, 15 years or so. So I actually saw cycles of body fashions changing. And then my body changes as well with, like, age, with pregnancy, my body changes. So it's not really compatible for me to always fit this certain fashionable body type, like at the moment, this have a big bum and whatever, like, not everybody is built in these dimensions, I'm not built in those dimensions. So these certain body types I might want to have, like, a lot of them aren't actually even attainable for me. And even if they are, it's not really worth the life cost to achieve them. So realizing that was huge. But even in having that realization, it doesn't mean it hangs around every day. And it certainly doesn't stay there every time I would come to eat, for example. Like, that would be straight out the window. Whatever insight and clarity I'd had was gone. So I had quite a few little habits or techniques, whatever you want to call them, that I would try and use every day or every meal. I would use these things multiple times a day. So one of the things I did was really try and focus on the bigger picture. I think eating disorders are so now-centric. Like, how do I feel right now? How do I feel today? How do my clothes fit? What do I weigh? How many calories have I eaten? What am I eating later? What's someone else eating? Like, you're so stuck in how you feel right now and what you're eating and weighing right now. So anything that could, like, zoom my lens out and look at the bigger picture of my life. So I'd ask myself things like, where do I want to be in a year? Or where do I want to be in 5 years? And the answer would be, I don't know, I want to be, it's not even the big things. This is not like a 5-year plan. Like, I want to purchase a house or whatever job or whatever. No, not like that. Like, I want to be able to go to a cafe and order cake and a coffee, spend my money on food and enjoy it. Or I want to not have to think about food every second of the day. I want to be spontaneous, be fun. I want to have open packets of food in the kitchen and not feel like it's driving me insane.
Yeah.
You know, like those small things that people wouldn't even notice, but they would be life-changing for me.
Yeah. Going out without your Tupperware, right?
Yes. Oh my God, yes. Or taking your own food places, like,
Yeah.
which sometimes actually is, you actually have to go through periods of that in recovery if you need a lot of structure and that kind of thing. But ultimately, I wanted to get to a place of like food freedom. So then I'd have to ask myself, like, okay, so that's where I want to be. Are my behaviors in the now aligning to what I ultimately want to be able to do, or to my values? And if it was an eating disorder decision, like, it wouldn't be. That would not be aligned to the life that I wanted to live. So I was almost like trying to swap my lens. Like, I feel like an eating disorder lens is like a microscope. Like, you're so zoomed in on the now, what are you doing right now? And you need to zoom it out and get more of a telescope. Like, but what do I want to do with my life? Not how do I want to feel better right now today?
Nice one.
So
that's a good analogy.
I've got one more. Then with my body, more specifically, if I was feeling really uncomfortable in my body, I would try and, so I think eating disorders, you have like really rose tinted glasses over body types, and I don't know, like, I want to look like them. Or I would think stuff like, oh, if only I looked like her, I would be so happy. Or if only I fit into this pair of jeans, I would be so happy. Life would be so good. And I'd have to try and like stop myself and have a bit more of a reality check. Like, no, what would that body really mean for me? Because a body doesn't just exist in isolation. Like, there's a whole life that exists around your body. So something I would actually do several times a day, I would get a piece of paper, split it in half, like draw a line down the middle, and write on one side of the page, like the left-hand side of the page, all of the... Are you allowed to swear?
Yes, absolutely.
All of the shit things about being in a weight-suppressed body, or about staying as I was right there, right then, or whatever. And then on the other side of the page, I'd write all of the benefits of change, or of weight gain, or of being in a healthy body. This was true for me, but whatever it would be for somebody else, whatever your situation is. And then I would list out, so like on the left-hand side, that body that I thought I wanted, in reality, would make me cold, isolated, disconnected, boring, unable to join in, not the person I wanted to be. And then on the right-hand side, like the benefits of a non-weight suppressed body, even if I didn't like the body, but the benefits of it would be, I wouldn't sit and think about food every day. I would be able to eat what I wanted. I would be able to join in with people. I would be spontaneous. I could laugh. So it's trying to flip my perspective and not just focus on, I don't know, the aesthetic of a body or what I thought would make me feel good, but actually look at, you kind of need to complete the picture. Like, you can't just look at the body in isolation, like looking at the full life around that body.
Yeah.
And what that life would actually mean for me, and whether it was what I wanted to live, and it probably wasn't really. So
that's so good. I think it's the whole microscope versus telescope.
Yes.
I love, because if you think about it also, you know, the whole idea that thinness is better is diet culture bullshit. And that relies on a system that is sexist and racist and ableist, and that actually really discards most bodies, right? Because 99% of the population doesn't look like the standard. They're totally unattainable anyway. So I think, just like you, like for me, a lot of the times it was thinking of, I don't want to participate in something that is sexist and racist and ableist, because this is not who I am. In my daily life, I don't judge people and say like, oh, I'm not speaking to you because you don't look like Kim Kardashian, right? It would be completely random. And sometimes, like, when you kind of express that to clients, they're like, oh, yeah, I guess I'm not living my values, right? I feel like I'm this morally virtuous person because I'm going to be thinner, but actually I'm just buying into a system that rejects most of the population on bases that are not suitable. So I think it's really important to reiterate that, and for people to listen to that over and over again, and to say like, don't go that path. This is not the right way.
Yeah.
So,
and also sometimes you'd look at other people and I felt like I had a real filter on my lens of who I allowed in, and I didn't really see the body diversity that existed in the world. I kind of just saw a certain body type that I was so fixated on, and then I would just internalize that and think, well, that's what I need to be like, regardless of what my natural body was. That would just become the standard that I should be. And like for that other person, it might not be attainable for them. You don't know what someone's sacrificing to look a certain way, or it might be attainable for them. It might be completely natural for them, but that's never going to change my natural body type. Just because it's natural for another person doesn't mean it is for me. And is it worth the life cost of living in a body that's not natural, that's not my natural size? Like, I've done it for years. I know the horror.
I would say absolutely not. Yes.
I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point with who we choose to let into our filters. So I think one thing that can be really helpful for people in recovery, and even people post-recovery, I mean, I know for me, as I've gotten into this work, starting to follow others on social media who are in diverse bodies in terms of shape, size, color, gender, sexual orientation, all of that. And just it's opened my eyes so much to the beauty in so many other people and seeing how people are happy in, such a wide range of all of those attributes. And I think that's really helped me sort of stay the course in my recovery. One other thing that we wanted to ask, or you sort of brought up some of the habits that you had on a daily basis to help you when you were feeling maybe like the eating disorder was taking over again, or you felt like you need to push it at bay. Did you have any sort of affirmations or mantras that you would repeat to yourself on a regular basis, or was that something you used?
I lived by mantras. I absolutely loved them. I think a lot of the treatment I'd had in the past, I tried really hard to rationalize my way out of an eating disorder or to kind of argue my way through the thoughts, which it just never works. Like I felt like there was always another thought just waiting around the corner. So as soon as I'd argue one thought away, another thought would come, and then I'd argue that thought away, and then another would come. And I would just end up paralyzed. Like I called it food paralysis. I just couldn't move on the spot because I was bombarded with all these thoughts until one was good enough and I'd then believe it. So I think I found it better this time around. I think it was a big part of CBT-E, the treatment I had, is the focusing on the actions. Even if they don't make sense to you, you just do the actions anyway. So I kind of got to the point where I just try and block the thoughts that I was getting. Sometimes I'd even just be like, la, 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 in my head, like trying to drown out the noise of the thought, honestly. Stood in my kitchen. And then I would just say to myself opposite actions and do the opposite of the eating disorder thought. And using mantras was quite a good, rather than going into lengthy arguments with myself in my head, just using a mantra was like a really quick, like way to snap back kind of thing. So I used things like food is just food, or food doesn't have to be perfect. Break the cycle was quite good to remind myself, like, if I want to do something different at some point, I have to make a change. Might as well do it now. I would say Bren baby's bones to myself, which Bren is my husband. And those were 3 of my big goals in recovery. So just to try and connect me.
Okay.
Connect me to the why. Why was I doing this? I would think just because I get a thought doesn't mean I need to act on it, which was really helpful to realize that like your thoughts actually aren't the truth. And even if you believe them, even if they feel like the truth, it doesn't mean you need to act on it. You can still do the opposite.
Yeah.
I would say don't give up on what you want the most for what you want in the moment, which was a really good way of that, reminding myself, like, don't act on what feels better now because it will sabotage what I ultimately want. And then another thing I've said a lot is different bodies, different paths, which especially in recovery, like you have very different needs to the people around you. And they're likely not recovering from restriction and starvation. So their diet and their needs and their feelings around food and their cravings are going to be so different to yours. And even thinking to myself, like, if the people in my house had gone through what I'd gone through, they'd probably be feeling as crazy as I do around food. They'd probably want to eat like I want to eat, and they'd be eating things several times in a row or obsessing over it. You know, it's almost like I'm not actually abnormal. It's my situation that's abnormal. Like the thoughts I'm getting are very normal for an abnormal situation. You know?
Yeah. I think the "you are not your thoughts" is one that I find very powerful as well. And I haven't had CBT enhanced for eating disorder, but I've had CBT for my perfectionism. So that was post HA recovery. You know, I was already in a much better place with food, but I was still paralyzed by a lot of my own thoughts. And I agree with you. For me, CBT was just the ability to dissociate the thoughts and the behaviors, and to say the fact that this thought is telling me, you know, oh, you would be so much better thinner, but I actually know that this is not the right way, and I can do something different from that. I don't have to follow everything that my head says. Yeah. It's just so powerful, and it's so simple if you think about it.
Yes. And what I really love from that detachment that you make as well, I think even if I detach those in the past,
Siri is trying to take part.
Oh dear. Sometimes I talk and my Alexa pipes up and I'm like, I haven't spoken to you. I was actually in a job interview once and I said something and Alexa started talking. It was awful.
Oh no.
And then also what's so bad is I was then shouting at her like, Alexa, stop. And the person who was interviewing me went, oh, don't worry, I've got kids too. And I was like, I'm not shouting at my kids. But I was like so rude because it was just Alexa that I was shouting at. And she was like, oh yeah, don't worry, I shout at my kids too.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I always get surprised like when Siri kind of shows up. I'm like, who's here? Anyway, sorry, you were saying.
So yeah, even if I'd have separated them in the past, I think I kind of thought I had to fix my thoughts first in order to recover. So I was like, once my thoughts make sense and I can feel okay about doing this, then I'll do it. But the flip with CBT-E was even if it doesn't feel right, you can't make sense of it at all, you do the action anyway. And after you just do the action several times, even if it feels like the worst thing in the world, your thoughts almost catch up second. And I don't know, it's kind of like behaviour and action first, thoughts catch up. And lots of other things catch up, like nothing's linear, but...
Yeah. And Nicola, I think lots of your research concludes also that, you know, you need to eat. You cannot fix the thoughts before you're actually gonna... You cannot recover by only fixing the psychology, right?
Right.
There needs to be fueling, because then we spoke about it with Dr. Gordiani recently as well, where she was talking about the cave brain and all of that, where if you're under fueling, then obviously your thoughts are affected by that as well. So it's you cannot get out of that cycle. But I'm just curious to know, so like how, for a lot of the people working on recovery from HA, the problem is also the guilt that comes with eating more. So even if they decide, I'm going to do it, I'm going to follow what Meg is saying, I'm going to eat, you know, doing opposite actions, all of that, then they have this wave of really discomfort and guilt that shows up afterwards. How have you dealt with that specifically?
I actually get a lot of people saying that to me as well, and saying things like, I really, really want to do it, but I can't because I feel so guilty. And I'm like, I did too. Like, I didn't do it because I'd found a way to stop the guilt. I did it despite the guilt. And I'm not portraying it right if it looked like I wasn't feeling guilty going through it, because I absolutely did. And one of the mantras I actually used loads was, I am allowed to swear, feel shit and do it anyway. Like, it's okay to not feel okay. You can feel absolutely awful, but you can still do it. Which sounds like, it actually sounds obvious, but that blew my mind, realising that I could feel awful and just keep going.
Yeah, but it goes back to the "you are not your thoughts," right? We get so used to follow our own thoughts, and then, you know, suddenly we realize, oh, I can actually function without following what my head is saying right now. So and then probably like the first few times you do it, it is going to feel like the worst thing in the world. So you do this thing you've built up to doing because you want a better life at the end of it. You do it and it feels even worse than you felt before you did it. So in a way, like when you begin recovery, it almost confirms why you didn't want to do it. You know, like face your fear and then you'll get over it. But you face your fear and everything you're scared of is confirmed.
And so then you're like, well, this is exactly why I didn't do it. But you kind of need to push through that, like to learn that even if your fear is confirmed, I don't know, you can tolerate it, or other things improve alongside it. It's actually not as bad as you thought it would be, or it can lessen like how important you think it is. Like say, I don't know, a fear of a certain BMI, which you actually do need to get to or get beyond to recover and become healthy. Like certainly to get to your own set range, it could well be above a target that's been set for you. And you think, oh, but I can't get there because I'll be so unhappy when I'm there. You might get there and still be like, oh, I don't really like my body here. But if you can move other things into your life, and the things that are going to get better, like your thoughts can improve, you won't think about food all the time, like the importance of that body can actually reduce so much, and the other things can move in and take up so much space that even if your fear does come true, doesn't going to mean it's the end of the world thing that you're building it up to be in your head, but you'll never find out if you don't get there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen that a lot too, Nicola, where the fear of weight gain is like super intense. And then after really putting in the work, the first few weeks is sometimes really difficult. But then there's a point where the person realizes that this fear was kind of irrational in a way, that it was much bigger than what it was really going to happen if they ate properly.
I think people fear the extremes. So, you think that if you stop high intensity exercise for a while, our society tells us you're going to turn into a puddle of jelly. We all know that doesn't actually happen. It goes, but then when you just do it and you don't run for a day, or you don't walk for a day, or you don't lift weights for a day, and you're like, oh, that didn't feel great, but I'm okay. I'm not actually a puddle of jelly.
Yeah. But so also, so I don't have exercise as an issue, but I'll just try to anyway. So if like you're worried, oh, I'll become a puddle of jelly, and you don't, so you face your fear and it doesn't come true. But if, I don't know, you've got a 6-pack and you're really worried, oh, but if I stop doing this, I'll lose my 6-pack. That might come true. Like you might lose whatever definition you've got, but your life can get so much better in replace of that it can mean so much more to you than that ever did. So even though your fear can come true, doesn't mean it's the end of the world. You can find other ways to cope, other things to replace it with that are more important, that you could never find out if you didn't face your fear and let go of that thing you're holding on to.
Yeah.
As an example, I don't have a 6-pack.
Yeah.
None of us do.
And it's really, I mean, I did for a short period of time, and it really wasn't worth what it took to get that. I mean, it took being in the gym hours a day. It took completely underfueling my body, and it led to 18 months to try and get pregnant. So yeah, totally not worth it.
Which is true for you, but like someone else, you might have a friend that can do it no problem. It doesn't really seem to impair their life. They carry on regardless, but they're not you. They don't have your genetics. They don't have your history. They don't have your body. They don't have anything that you've got going on. So it's irrelevant whether someone else can do something easily or not, or what they look like or anything. Like it will never be true for you. All you've ever got is yourself.
Yes.
On the point of guilt, my psychologist would say to me a lot, the point of it isn't to just sit and fester in a pit of guilt. Like you're not doing these opposite actions to just sit there feeling shitty.
That sounds really nice.
Well, because I would go to her and say like, it's not working. I'm doing these opposite actions that you're telling me to do. And then I feel absolutely awful. Like this is exactly why I didn't want to do it. And so she'd try and help me cope with the guilt, I guess. So she'd say to me, like, distract yourself, find activities to do after you eat.
Yes.
So things like arts and crafts, reading a book, watching TV. I've just started doing puzzles, actually, which I wish I'd done during my recovery. They're such a good use of your like hands and brain. Quite a simple thing to do, but really distracting. Basically, anything that doesn't involve food or exercise, obviously don't distract yourself afterwards with exercise or anything body related. But it doesn't always work. Like even she'd tell me this and I'd go home and try it, but the volume of the guilt and frustration and everything would be so loud in my head. I couldn't read a book because I couldn't take in what was on the page over my thoughts. So at that point, realizing that like, it is okay to not feel okay. I can feel shit and do it anyway. Like I can tolerate not feeling good. I can try and distract, but if it doesn't work, it will actually just pass naturally. I don't need to quick fix it with an eating disorder. And then every time that I repeat the behavior, like maybe not the first few times, it might still feel just as awful, but a few times down the line, it's going to start feeling easier. And then the next time it'll feel easier. And gradually your brain's going to rewire around this behavior. and it won't produce that anxious, guilt-ridden response. But unless you push through it, if you keep compensating to undo what's making you feel guilty, you're just negating whatever it is you've faced and done. So you're never really allowing your brain to relearn, and you'll never neutralize the experience. Like, you have to push through it repeatedly, however awful it feels, and just keep doing it again and again anyway. It's really awful. No one would ever want to go through recovery.
Yeah, I don't know where I heard this. I think it was in a book. I don't remember where, but they used to say, like, feelings and emotions are a bit like a tunnel. So you kind of enter, but then at some point you come out of the tunnel, right? So they're not gonna stay with you forever. And I think that's sometimes what happens is, like, people feel like that guilt or that fear that they experience right after eating so much. It's never going to go away,
it's so
right? Unless they do the behaviors. But and you can try to distract yourself, or it might be difficult. I'm not negating the fact that it is a really difficult experience, but at some point it actually fades away. Like, there's a point where you're not going to sit with that guilt forever and ever.
And then the next time you go through the tunnel might be a bit shorter. Every time you repeat the behaviour, you're going through a shorter tunnel until you're not in the dark at all. It's just a natural, perfectly fine behaviour for you.
Yeah, totally.
So sort of going along with that, there can be times in our life where even after we've recovered from an eating disorder or recovered periods, there can be things that happen to us that make us relapse into those restrictive behaviors. So, things like the pandemic or grief, or I don't know how you felt after your miscarriage, Meg, but after mine, I struggled because my body had changed for pregnancy, but yet I wasn't pregnant anymore. And that was really hard for me to deal with. So any tips that you have for people in that kind of situation where there's something external that's happened that changes their world in a way that makes control feel like it's, makes relapse feel like a safe place to go?
Yes, I guess it can kind of happen because it's out of your own control, or because you feel out of control and kind of choose to go back to it almost. Like, even with starting your period, I think as much as people want that, sometimes that can actually be a goal of their recovery. And then when it happens, I think people freak out. It can be a real trigger to relapse back into it. But just from speaking to people, it seems like that can be the case sometimes. But like, I don't know if it's just seen as a marker of health, like once you've got your period, that's it, you're healthy kind of thing. But like, certainly for me, that was not the case at all. Like, once I got my period back, I actually I got my period back at quite a low weight, I would say, like for my own body. I was still weight suppressed, and I had to gain another kilos to get to within my set range, to a point where I was kind of healthy. And I knew it wasn't a healthy weight for me because I still obsessively thought about food all the time. And that's not a good place to be. I didn't want to live the rest of my life like that. So even if a doctor had said to me then, like, oh, your weight restored now, you've got your period, you're fine, which that would not be good practice. But if somebody said that, like, it's not fine. I have to live in that brain. I don't want to think about food for the rest of my life. So even if someone told me I was healthy, like, I'm the one who has to take that brain home and sit there thinking of food. So if you're thinking of food constantly, you are not at a healthy, well, I would say you're not at a healthy weight. There's so much more beyond that. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
But then also, like, unconsciously, you're saying, like, lack of control and that kind of thing, the kind of more accidental side of a relapse. I have accidentally relapsed before. So it's the relapse that I'm recovering from. So about 4 years ago or so, I moved to New York for a year. I was away from my husband. He stayed living in Dubai. So it's like a 9-hour time difference, 14-hour flight. And it was really, really difficult. And I was commuting like 4 hours a day. I was really busy and stressed and anxious and like really overwhelmed. And I was in a really, really good place in terms of my weight and my attitude to food and everything. But because of the stress and anxiety, I kind of lost my appetite naturally, no intention of my own. I didn't even notice it happening. And I accidentally lost some weight. There was zero intention. I didn't even know. I wasn't weighing myself. I had no idea it was happening until it passed whatever my threshold is. And it flipped my eating disorder switch. And it then became intentional once again, like that. If you're listening to it and you're in a position of like being starved, I think that sounds mental, that you could accidentally lose weight. I didn't believe it when people used to say, oh, I lost my appetite. I didn't think there was such a thing, because I was thinking about food all the time. I couldn't believe anyone could accidentally like forget about food. But I think because I could, it did happen to me because I was healthy enough for it to happen. Like I was more intuitive with my eating. I didn't have thoughts of food. I wasn't interested in food. It wasn't a big part of my day. I just ate it and moved on. So it meant I could also more easily lose interest in food, which is what happened. And then, so once my weight went past that point, it flipped my switch again. And I was straight back into, then I was weighing myself. Like there's no golden ticket. I didn't accidentally fall into an eating disorder and it was accidental forevermore. Like at some point it's going to flip. And then it was once again controlling my life, controlling my thoughts. I was isolating myself. I was miserable again. I wasn't fun. I didn't have a personality. Like, so it took over again. And I think like what I learned from that, again, to have any sort of gratefulness for a relapse, is that I've learned that can happen, that you can accidentally relapse with no intention. And now I know, like, I'm not a person who can ever afford to lose weight or to restrict my eating, like however accidental that might be, or however intuitive it might feel, like because of my genetics and my history and my brain wiring and my health legacy, like I have to protect myself and make sure that will never happen to me again, even if I'm in a position where it might. Just like if someone had like an ACL injury, they might not go on a skiing holiday because that's not going to be good for them health-wise. Other people could go, but for them personally, that's not okay. And that's me around weight loss and restrictive diets. Even, and I'm going to be unpopular for saying this, but diets like veganism, that kind of thing, I personally, I'm just speaking for myself, with my history, would not do that because it is a restrictive diet. Like, it just is. Like, that's the facts. I'm not saying it's done intentionally, but from my experience in New York, like for me personally, I've learned I can never, however accidental or non-eating disorder intention it is, I can't dabble with losing weight or restricting my diet. So that's a really, really unpopular opinion, but I'm just saying it for me personally. And I think like what it's taught me this year, like we have been through such a difficult year with losing Alfie. That was what our baby boy was called. And I think intuitively, I probably would, I have lost my appetite, but it doesn't mean I've eaten any less. I've gone back into a really, really structured way of eating. I eat 3 meals and 3 snacks, which, to be honest, when I'm feeling okay, when things are at more stable times of life, even intuitively, I actually eat 3 meals and 3 snacks. Like that feels like a really intuitive way for me to eat. Like I obviously eat 3 meals and I can't go between 2 meals without eating. So like that is an intuitive way for me to eat. But when my eating, when intuition fails me, I would say, like I can't always rely on it. So if intuitively I wouldn't want to eat like that, I actually now override it, which this almost sounds disordered as an approach, but it's protective. Like I know I'm not a person who can ever afford to lose weight. And so even if people around me are, whatever we're going through, say Brendan, my husband, lost his appetite and he was struggling to eat, I wouldn't be able to do that. Like it might be okay for him. Other people might even expect it of me or ask me like, oh, are you losing weight because you're so sad? Or I bet you haven't been able to eat. And I'll be like, nope, I have to eat. You know, it's not an option for me. I make sure that I eat whatever I'm going through. And I hope for the rest of my life now that I've learned from these experiences, like what an intentional relapse, I don't really want to call it intentional relapse, but you know, like a more actively like eating disorder fueled, or a completely accidental and then it triggers your eating disorder. Like I know what both of those experiences are now. So I just feel like, I don't know, we're already dealing with the loss of Alfie. We don't want to have to deal with my eating disorder as well.
No, for sure. For sure. And I can only salute, like, I'm a fan and a follower, and I see how much effort you put into taking care of yourself in a way that is not going back to those behaviors. And I can't imagine what the loss of a baby means so far along in the pregnancy. So I really feel, I remember feeling for you when I heard that had happened. So I can see, I think most of us, if we've been following you for a while, we can see how hard you're working at taking care of yourself, making sure that everything is going as good as it can, right? Knowing the circumstances.
I think, you'd be like, I think one of my fears was always, I don't know, I think I was scared of feeling certain things and that I wouldn't have the strength. I don't know, the idea of tolerating not feeling okay was the worst thought ever for me. Like, I just wanted to feel okay all the time. With my ink disorder, I think I was in like a controlled state of okay. Like, it wasn't really okay, but as long as I kept on top of all the things I had to do, I could control that feeling of okay. But what I've been amazed at this year is how much I can actually tolerate not feeling okay. Like, how we felt this year has been awful, but we're getting through it. You know, like, I can feel awful and still carry on and still eat, and the days will pass. Like, I can actually do it. And whether it's like feeling guilt from eating, which people do, and that's so awful to sit through, or whether it's things that are going on in the rest of your life, I think when you stop turning to the eating disorder behaviours to feel better or for a quick fix, you'll actually be amazed how much you can tolerate and what you can sit with. But as long as you keep going to your eating disorder quick fix, you're never giving yourself that opportunity to learn and to build those skills to sit, allow it, distract yourself, use other things to help yourself cope. Like, they don't work as well, honestly. Like, the stuff I've used this year to get through, it's not been quick fixes. Like sitting and doing a puzzle, I don't finish a puzzle and feel ecstatically happy. But I've stopped myself going to a destructive behaviour. I've done something that keeps me living a life that's in line with the life I want to live. You know, it's not a self-sabotaging behaviour. It's just, I don't know, a mild coping behaviour, which...
Yeah. That's, I think it's very powerful what you're sharing, that we really need to learn how to sit with those difficult feelings in order for recovery to last really
People
long.
will be able to.
I agree with that. And I totally agree with you also that I also believe I can never restrict my food. And, you know, I live with 2 autoimmune diseases. I've got the genetics for all sorts of different problems. But I know that food is not the place I can work on. I can add stuff, yes. I cannot remove anything. But I've, just like you, I've learned it the hard way. Like, I went through phases where I'm like, oh, I guess I'm fine. You know, I can do that. And turns out, no, it is really dangerous.
Because you've not healed your genetics, have you? You haven't treated your genetics. You've still got the same brain.
You cannot. And then, you know, your body has been there. And I think there is a memory of what you can do. And I agree with you. Like, you pass a certain threshold and you can feel the obsessions coming back. And so I think it's really key. I'm just curious to know, like, how do you feel your body image evolved through, you know, getting over recovery a first time and then a relapse? And how would you say it has evolved over time?
So I'd say, like, I realise I'm speaking from a position of, like, thin privilege, as it's called. Like, I am in a smaller body.
All of us.
I am. And a lot of people do say to me, like, oh, but you wouldn't have been able to do it if you were born into a bigger body, which is where, as well, like, that focusing on life rather than your body, that's where I think, like, you can do it whatever the size of your body, because you're not focused on the body, you're focused on the life you want to live, and your body is just whatever size it needs to be to facilitate that. But at the same time, I do appreciate I am in a thin body. But still, regardless, it is something I've experienced. I think some bits have almost changed spontaneously, and some things I've had to work on to change. So, like, a weird spontaneous one, when I was weight suppressed, I would look at photos of myself in a healthy body and be disgusted by them, like actually repulsed. I couldn't even look at them. The thought of ever looking like that again was just disgusting to me. And now, like, when I am at the same weight as I was in the photo, I look at the photo and think it looks fine. And I don't know what I've done for that to happen. I don't feel like I've actively challenged that. It's like I swap the glasses that I'm wearing when I'm weight suppressed or when I'm non-weight suppressed. And how I physically see my body is different. And I didn't have huge body distortions. Like, I don't think I saw myself as a lot bigger than I was. I didn't have that stereotypical thing that you think of with anorexia. of like looking in the mirror and seeing a bigger body looking back. I honestly don't think I had that. I think I pretty much saw what I was seeing, but still there must have been some sort of distortion going on, because how I interpreted it, what I thought was okay and what wasn't, I don't know, it's completely changed as I've become like into a healthy body. And then also I think like with recovery, as things have moved into my life and my life's become more diverse and less focused on food, body and weight, it's almost like naturally happens. My body's taken a smaller position in my life. My life's become more diverse and fuller. So yeah, almost naturally, to the point when it feels more like, okay, it's just a body. Whereas before it was everything. Like it wasn't just a body, it was my life's work. You know, I'd poured everything into this, you know? And yeah, I feel like, but that really, I feel like the eating disorder has to move out for that to be able to happen. Like you have to create space for life to move in. You can't think, oh, okay, so I'll diversify my life and then my body will feel like my body image will be better. That doesn't work. Like you're a human being, not a superhero. You've got finite capacity. You don't have the means to bring everything into your life and maintain an eating disorder. So you have to get some eating disorder out to move some life in, and then that diversity, I think, naturally shrinks the segment that your body kind of takes.
Totally. We're big fans of my body is an instrument, not an ornament, which is that saying by the ladies at Beauty Redefined, Lindsay and Lexi Kite, because I think it just shows how much
facilitate the life you want to live.
You don't need to think that much about it. It's just kind of supporting you. It's that vessel and that's it. Totally.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on the idea of body neutrality versus body positivity? Where do you fall on that question?
Yeah, I found that really hard. It felt a bit far-fetched for me to, I don't know, it kind of scared me, the thought of going straight to loving my body. And then also like that thought of focusing on life, to me, like then loving your body is still putting conditions on your body. And like what happens then when your body changes, like with age or like, for me, like with pregnancy, like you go through things in life, your body is naturally going to change. So having those conditions on your body, just personally, it didn't sit as well with me. And my psychologist introduced me to body neutrality and body acceptance as well, to take the focus away from my body. And like she would say to me, you can accept your body. You don't have to love it, but you can accept your body at the size it's supposed to be for the life that it allows you to live. So like if I think about the things I want to do in life, like feel close to people and present with them, not just physically with them, like actually feel connected to them, be able to go out and eat with them, be spontaneous, all of these things, like to be able to do those things, I have to have a healthy body. I physically can't do those things in a weight suppressed body. It is humanly impossible for me, for anyone really. It is humanly impossible. So I have to have a healthy body. And the value of doing those things I want to do can trump the discomfort that I feel over being in the body that I have to be in. You know, like putting more importance on life. Like life is more important than the body that I live it in, kind of thing. And I still think like, I don't know, you don't need to like it. Like I would still think I don't like it. Like I think, oh, I wish my legs would be like this or that. But then I'd have to think, well, okay, and if my legs were like this or that, my life would be shit. So no, I don't wish my legs were like this or that, because then that'd be a waste of my life, you know. And
that's not the life I want.
Like thinking again, like what do I want to remember when I'm 80? If I'm so lucky to be an 80-year-old and look back on my life, like will I remember that little buzz I got from, I don't know, fitting in whatever size jeans? Or will I remember the regret of having sacrificed my life to be able to do it? Or like on the flip side, will I remember the discomfort of, I don't know, fitting into a pair of jeans that maybe I wish I didn't fit that size. So, that doesn't feel very comfortable. But if it allows me to live like a full and meaningful life, surely I'm going to remember the joy of that over the discomfort of the body I lived it in. So just having that kind of like perspective. And again, for me, taking it off my body has been pivotal, and putting the focus onto life.
Yeah. Totally. I also think that so much of what we do is focused on making our bodies look a certain way. And when we let go of all of that, it does allow us to just be more present in our lives. Like I don't wear makeup anymore. I barely ever blow dry my hair. It just, I have other things that I would rather do with that time and with that, with that money. And I think that there's so much in our society that's so body focused, like, all the magazines and TV shows and, buy this thing to make you look better, buy this thing to like get rid of your wrinkles, I came across a random YouTube video the other day that was, this doctor is selling this anti-aging miracle supplement thing. And it's like, $60 a month. And it's just like, it probably doesn't even work, but they just prey on us all the time, like our insecurities and our fears.
And it takes a lot, doesn't it? It takes like your money, your headspace, your social abilities, your relationships, like. Partly as well, I think maybe it can be a bit overwhelming as well, thinking, like, I'm just thinking how that might sound, like, the life that you're able to live. If you're coming at it from a point where you are restricted, starved, like your life's small, because it is when you're restricted and starved, like the more you restrict your food down, the smaller your world gets. So it's quite overwhelming to think like, oh, what would my life be in its place? But it's not even the big things. Like I call some of the things I've worked towards like my little, but really my big goals. Like some of the things which are most meaningful to me on paper wouldn't look like anything. People would be like, what? That was a goal for you. But it is the stuff, like I said, being able to have open packets of food. Like a friend can give me half a chocolate cake left over from a birthday party and I can sit it in the fridge and forget about it.
Yeah.
And I can take a slice. And then or food can go off in the fridge, something like that. Stuff like that to me. If food goes off, I'm like, wow, I forgot about food enough for it to go off. Or I wasn't planning how I was going to use everything and make the most of it and be, do you know what I mean? Like that to me is like a huge goal. Or not thinking about food every second of the day, not having to plan my food, being able to eat the same as other people, being able to let people cook for me or prepare my food, or like going to a friend's house, knowing that they're going to cook me a meal and I don't need to know what it is. I know I'll be able to eat whatever they give me. I don't have to compensate before it. I don't have to restrict after it. Like that, it seems like a small thing, but that is so freeing. It creates, I don't know, it's just like to sit in that headspace that's not consumed by food is unbelievable. Totally. It doesn't sound like it, but when you've experienced not having it, like it really is.
And going back to what we were saying about, the messages that we get as especially as women that, identify as women and are cis or hetero, to me, like I find that once I found out that there was a whole industry and that the system was kind of stacked against me to start with, because the system is actually telling me that all my worth is in my appearance, I think I got so angry that I also, it was almost easier for me to kind of react and say like, I'm not doing this anymore. Because it's just so unfair, there's a sense of, and it's funny because when I speak to clients, lots of people don't have any, it's just like me, like I was not raised in a family where we would talk about these things. And so it was just, when you don't talk about these things and when you accept the status quo, basically you don't even wonder, right? You're not asking questions, you're not questioning. Why am I spending so much time like taking care of my appearance when my husband doesn't do all these things, right? And I find that deconstructing all of that and knowing that there's a huge business behind it. And if I choose not to give them my money, then, I can change the world like one step at a time. If 800 of us do that, we can change something. If the whole population of women do that, then we can do something. But also knowing that I had a choice, because at some point then you can flip the narrative and you can say, hang on, am I a bad feminist if I decide that I'm going to wear mascara? But to me, it's just kind of having that choice. And as you say, like it's the food freedom and the choice of doing whatever I want with my body, and knowing that my worth is so much more than what I look like. And if my hair is done well, and if my skin looks perfect and all of that stuff, it was just really liberating for sure. And I think that's what we encourage people following us to reach for. So I think that's why we wanted to have you on also, because you speak about that a lot, about the values, about what you want in life, about putting perspective really in the way they deal with food in their body.
Did you find following people as well on like Instagram, that kind of thing has helped with that?
Totally.
Are there certain accounts Yeah.
Totally. And for me, it's one thing with seeing diverse bodies, just like Nicola said before, is just seeing people that were completely different to me. Because again, obviously, you know, I can understand as well, like it's easy to reject that narrative if you're somehow in the average size and appearance of a woman, right? I know that people living in much larger body get insulted in the street all the time. This is not an experience I've had, so it's obviously easier for someone like me or like you, both of you, right? We don't attract that type of negative attention, so obviously we don't have those microaggressions to deal with all the time. But so seeing diversity on my feed, definitely, and then just kind of reading about, you know, women's empowerment. One book that was really eye-opening that I read recently was The Moment of Lift by Melinda Gates. So I knew that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was doing philanthropy, but what I didn't know is that they started with helping poverty, and what they found out is like, how do you actually resolve poverty in a lot of places in the world is not by throwing money at it, is to actually really advocate for gender equality, because the problem is really based on the inequality that happens, the fact that women are not treated properly, that, you know, they stay in poverty, and so their children stay in poverty. And it's so interesting to me that she kind of came full circle and ended up saying what we need is gender equality, is birth control, is like stuff for women, because this is really how we're going to solve a lot of the issues in the world that depend on the patriarchy somehow.
I think I need to go read that book.
Yeah.
Oh, that book is amazing, because it's both like statistics, you know, there's lots of figures. They obviously threw lots of money at this, right? But also all the stories that she brought back from going to see the communities. And she is really saying also that she struggled herself with that. You know, had to go back to work once you've had children and you are in a position of power at a company like Microsoft. You know, you're a woman in tech. Like it's really hard to find your way in a environment that might be really sexist. So she uses real life stories and experiences, and then a lot of statistics. And it's just really scary, though, to read what is going on. You kind of realize, God, we've got a long way to go. So, but to finish this wonderful interview that you gave us, Meg, we have one question we ask all of our guests, and it's how they are all in their life. So how they really live life on their own terms in an authentic, full-on type of way. And I'm interested to know, for you, since you are very much recovered, you know, what does it look like for you right now?
Yeah, I would say one way I've been all in recently, or trying to be, which is quite new for me, is like emotionally, you know, which has been hard because we've been going through a fair bit. But, you know, like allowing that to happen, like sitting there, it's not all fun. Like, I'm not enthusiastic about this, but, you know, emotionally, like the good, the bad, and the ugly, being there with it all, being there with Bren through it as well, not being locked away in my own world, finding my own ways to cope or run away, and just trying to get through it healthily. Like, it's still not a quick process. In fact, I think it's slower getting through it healthily than turning to something that would be quicker, but at least at the end of it, there's not going to be an end, but, you know, at least it allows me to still be me, and I'm still present with him. And yeah, it's not just for me as well, you know, like for people around me as well. That, yeah, that's been a big goal of mine this year. Like, I know life will move on and we'll feel differently, and different things will happen in the future, like feelings pass, what have you, but eating disorders don't, and I don't want to go back to it as a coping mechanism for like short-term fix, and then I'm stuck with it again. I'm not. I can go through recovery again. Like, you're not stuck with it, but I don't want to do that. Like, I've learned from my past experiences, and so I can protect myself, feel my feelings, which is horrible at times. But like, yeah, it doesn't feel horrible ever, like all the time. So I'd say that's how I've been trying to be all in.
That's awesome.
I think that's so important. I know that in my life as well, I've trapped myself into different situations because I haven't wanted to feel not okay. And it's so, I think it's so that, like, that's so true for me as well at the moment, is I'm trying really hard to be okay with not being okay all the time, and not doing things, not avoiding tough conversations because something bad might happen, but rather having those conversations and actually moving through the issues with people. And, I think it's really hard right now, but I think it's going to lead me to a much better place than I've been for a long time. So
good.
I'm,
It's like messy as well, isn't it? I feel like it's a bit of trial and error, to be honest. Like you try one way and you're like, oh, actually that doesn't really work for me. That's not a very good coping mechanism or approach or whatever. And then you try another thing and you're like, oh, that actually quite reliably makes me feel better. Like even if it doesn't make me feel perfect, it does actually lift my mood. Like, I don't know, I like learn a song on the piano or something like that. I do have some things now. I don't know about you. I feel like I'm building up a few go-tos that can help me feel better, which I didn't really have in the past. Like I never had the time to build them because I was numbing myself so much. So at the age of now 32, I feel like I'm exploring these new things. Like I'm sure it's going to be quite an ongoing process from now.
And how wonderful, because, and I think for when you have kids, because it's not an if, it's a when, I'm sure. When you have kids, you will be able to transmit that to them, because this is something for them to see their parents actually really going through difficult moments and having to cope and having to sit with those feelings. And I think it's so much more sustainable for you and for different generations. And I think this is not something we've seen our parents do. I've seen my parents numb for most of their lives. And so obviously this is the only way that I've figured out how to do it. And lots of parents, used to completely hide that they had feelings, or were constantly kind of saying, no, everything's fine. But then what do you do when you really stuck in a difficult situation and you're, 18, 19 and university?
You run away.
You run away, you start controlling your food, you try alcohol, you try drugs, like anything that's going to make you, that's going to allow you to run away from it.
It can be hard as well these days, like with Instagram and stuff like that. Everything is like, you do look quite happy all the time, like on the face of it at least. So like allowing yourself still to feel what's actually going on. Like even like I was saying, I don't always go on Instagram. Like I don't want to be on there being like, everything's so great and brilliant. Like it's not, it's really, really hard. And sometimes I can't even post that, I'm not even going to be like fake about posting that it's hard. If I'm able to share it, I will. But I don't know. Yeah. Number one is like trying to get through it yourself and figure it out.
Well, that's beautiful. Yes. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Thank you as well, like saying we will have kids. Like I think so too. I think in whatever means as well, even if it's not how we originally planned to, like we hold on to, we will one day somehow have a family. Like we will. It might not necessarily be what we expect it to be. Hopefully it will. It might not necessarily be, but like we really do hold on to that it will happen. Like, and then absolutely, that's such a goal for me as well, is teaching a child that it's okay to feel your feelings. And I don't know, it feels weird when I'm still kind of learning all this stuff myself, but so many people don't.
I think it's just about being vulnerable in front of them as well. Like to me, like if there's one thing also I got better at in the pandemic, because we couldn't run away from our children somehow, is to show that it was really hard. And sometimes and then working as partners, my husband and I. So sometimes when I'm really kind of starting to feel really low, like he would kind of take over, but we would not hide to our kids that mommy just needs a break. Mommy needs to cry.
It's hard. It's hard. And I will get myself something nice to eat. I will watch a nice program on the telly. I will have a bath. Like it is hard, and I will look after myself through it. And even if it's still hard, like I'll still keep looking after myself, I won't model, and I'll quick fix and run out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Super important.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Meg. This has
been
wonderful, and look forward to seeing more of your journey as you those things go forward.
My first podcast I've ever been on, so thank you
that's
guys.
so exciting.
I'm so nervous. Thank you. You've been so nice to chat to.
Oh, such an honor. We're honored to have you. So tell us also, where can people find you?
So my accounts are, I have a YouTube and an Instagram. They're both called Megsyrecovery, and Instagram is Megsy_recovery.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll put that in the show notes, and we'll refer to all of the amazing tips and tricks you've shared with us.
It's all come from my own treatment as well. Like, again, anything to give forwards. Not everybody has access to such good treatment, so I think anything.
Oh, for sure.
That's just follow responsible accounts as well. I'm a big fan of unfollow stuff that doesn't make you feel good, that isn't helpful, that doesn't fill you up. Like, you don't need to follow that stuff. I'm sorry to say, there is some irresponsible stuff out there, and even if it's responsible but it's not helpful for you, if it's triggering for you in whatever way, even if it was helpful in the past and it's not now, just unfollow those accounts. It will make such a difference.
Hopefully they won't unfollow us.
Well, unfollow me, honestly. Like, I wouldn't care if I'm really unhelpful for people. Please unfollow me.
I know, I was just joking. Of course,
it's only there if it's helpful. Like, it's not there for followers. It's there to help if it helps.
Yep. Absolutely.
Of course, and I think that you can't resonate with everybody, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you know,
some
people will feel.
Someone said to me recently, "You can't be everyone's cup of tea, or you'll be a mug." Like, yeah.
So funny. All right. Well, it was absolutely lovely to have you on, and we're really super excited that this was your first podcast experience, and you survived it.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
So take good care of yourself, and we will make sure to share all your details for our listeners as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Meg.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Maybe take a few minutes to reflect on it and how you have been all in this past week. It always strikes me how different each person's all-in journey is. As I often say, there are many paths to HA and many paths out of it. Your journey is unique.
That is so true. And if you need more support on your journey, you should definitely start with No Period Now What, which you can get at noperiod.info/book.
And Florence and I both work with people on different aspects of period recovery and so much more. So if you'd like more personal advice and attention, you can go to noperiod.info/appointments to schedule a time to speak with me on fixing the issues underlying your missing periods and figuring out what those issues are.
And I'm at beyondbodyimage.com to work with me on the deeper emotional issues and your body image. I also run a French Instagram account, amenoré_fr. And obviously you can find Nicola at No Period Now What on Instagram. We also have joint clients, so you can access both our domains of expertise at the same time. If you enjoyed this podcast and found it helpful, please drop us a review to help more people find it.
Also, join the No Period Now What recovery support group at noperiod.info/support and let us know how All In is going for you.
All In is not just about period recovery, it's about getting your life back. See you in 2 weeks.
You were lost in fat loss till you got lost again. You were lost in fat loss. Now find yourself and then take all that you've learned about what love and loss, pleasure and pain. Never get lost again.